like to do is spend about, maybe 20 minutes going through an analysis of what self-improving artificial intelligence, what the likely consequences of that are. And then I'd love to spend the rest of the time brainstorming with you, assuming that we have self-improving artificial intelligence and productive nanotechnology, two of them together. What are the benefits and what are the dangers of that combo? And 2030 is a number that kind of seems to be something of a focal point for when these technologies will be around. Looking into what kind of society we want in 2030 and identifying sort of the positive features, avoiding the dangers, and deciding sort of what kind of legal system and what kind of design in these AIs will get us there. So, let's start. What is a self-improving system? It's a system that understands its own behavior at a very detailed level. It has a model of its own programming language, a model of its own program, a model of the hardware that it's sitting on, a model of any logic that it uses to reason. It's able to create its own software code. It's able to run that code and watch itself doing that execution so that it can learn from its own behavior. It can then reason about possible changes that it might make to itself and then change every aspect of itself to improve its behavior in the future. And potentially very, very powerful, very innovative new approach to artificial intelligence. There are at least 5 companies and research groups that are pursuing directions somewhat similar to this. Several of them are here, representatives are here at the conference. You might think that this is a very exotic, bizarre, kind of weird new technology, but in fact, any AI system that is goal-driven, when it gets sufficiently advanced, I claim will want to be of this form. And why is that? Well, what does it mean to be goal-driven? It means you've got some set of goals, and you consider different actions that you might take in the world. And if that action tends to lead to your goals more than not, then you take that action. And an action which involves changing yourself, improving yourself, makes you better able to reach your goals for the entire future history. So those are extremely valuable goals for a system to take. So basically any sufficiently advanced AI is going to want to improve itself, and then all of these features are features that it's going to want to have. These are all companies that are sort of taking different angles on that in that space, and I think as technology gets more advanced, we'll see many more heading in that direction. The combination of AI and nanotechnology, the two together, they're really quite wedded, because whichever technology shows up first, and I'm talking about particularly productive nanotechnology, the ability to not just build things in the atomic level, but to have devices which are able to do that, make copies of themselves and so on. If productive nanotechnology comes first, it will enable us to build such powerful and fast machines that we can use very brute force methods toward AI, such as directly modeling the human brain, that kind of model. Whereas if AI comes first, we can use the powerful AI to solve the last remaining hurdles toward productive nanotechnology. So whichever one comes first is probably just a matter of a few years before the second one comes. So we really have to think of these two technologies in tandem. And you can kind of get a sense of time scale and of what the productive power of these things is by looking at some analysis. Eric Drexler's great book describes in detail a particular model for how to do nanotech manufacturing facility and a nanotech computer. And he gives us this, he did very, very conservative designs. His computer is based on mechanical devices. But nonetheless, it gives us a sense of what the scale is. His manufacturing device is something that sits on the tabletop, weighs about 1 kilogram, runs on acetone and air, uses about 1.3 kilowatts, so it can be air-cooled, and it produces about 1 kilogram per hour of anything that you can describe and build in this way. In particular, you can make a copy of itself in about an hour, and the cost of anything that you can crank out of this is about $1 per kilogram, and that includes extremely powerful computers, diamond rings, anything you like that you can build. So one of the main things, in particular for considering the AI implications, is computation. So how much computation can we get with this technology? And again, Eric did an extremely conservative design, not using any quantum effects or even electronic effects, just little mechanical rods, because you can analyze those quite reliably, and we understand very well the behavior of diamond structures. And he shows how to build a gigaflop machine which sits in about 400 nanometers cubed, And it takes about 60 nanowatts. And so to make a big computer, we can make a very large parallel array of these guys. The main limiting factor is really power. And so if we give ourselves a budget of about 1 kilowatt, then we can have 10 to the 10th of these processors and fit them in about a millimeter cube. To get the heat out, we probably want to make it a little bit bigger, but basically we get a sugar cube sized device which is more powerful than all the compute power in the world today, I think. And it can be cranked out by this kind of manufacturing device in a couple of minutes for a few cents. So we're talking about a vast, amazing, huge increase in compute power. And here's a slide from Kurzweil showing Moore's law is this little region here. He extended it back in time. And that sort of shows that actually the slope seems to be increasing. And he has different lines depending on which slope you pick. But we can look forward to the time when we get to basically roughly human brain capacity. It's a controversial number, of course. But somewhere in 2020, 2030, we're talking about, assuming Moore's law holds, we're talking about machines that are human brain capacity, and that's sufficient to do brute force approaches to AI. We may get to AI much sooner than that if we use more sophisticated techniques. So what happens? What are the social implications of this combo of self-improving AI and artificial intelligence? I.J. Good was really interested. One of the fathers of modern Bayesian statistics, and way back in 1965, he was really looking ahead into what the future would be like. There's a quote that is quite popular from him. An ultra-intelligent machine could design even better machines. There would then unquestionably be an intelligence explosion, and the intelligence of man would be left far behind. Thus, the first ultra-intelligent machine is the last invention that man need ever make. It's a very powerful, strong statement, but it indicates the kind of runaway that is possible with this kind of technology. What are these systems going to be like? Are they going to be controllable? Particularly very promising.
Some may not be controllable.
Exactly. You guys heard about the storm worm? Which is now on somewhere between 1 and 100 million machines. It was just recently discovered that it's defending itself. As researchers probe it, it detects that, and it does a denial of service attack on any machine that tries to probe it. So it's a little bit disturbing. So what are these systems going to be like? Particularly systems which are capable of changing themselves. You might think they'd be the most unpredictable systems on the planet, because you might understand them today, and they might change themselves in some way that you wouldn't understand. And so if this really is going to be, in the next 20 years, some of the most powerful and omnipresent technology around, we better, have some kind of a theory or science for understanding these. And fortunately, back in the 1940s, John von Neumann and Morgenstern, and a little bit later, Savage and Ansgar and Ullmann, developed a powerful theory of rationality in economics, which doesn't actually apply very well to humans. Ironically, the rational agent that they describe is often called Homo economicus, but people actually are not rational in this way, and there's a whole subfield of economics today called behavioral economics, which studies what people actually do. But I claim that this theory actually will be an extremely good description of what these AIs will do, and I'll just very briefly go through the argument. I have a whole big long paper on it on my website. Let me first say what rational economic behavior is in this economic sense. It may be a little different than the sort of colloquial use of the word rational. Intuitively, from a distance, it basically just says you've got to have some goals, something you want to happen. You consider the possible actions you might take at any moment. You see which of your actions is most likely to give rise to your goals, and you do that. And then you take the action, you see what actually happens, and you update your beliefs about how the world works using Bayes' theorem. In the mathematical formulation, there are two key entities: the utility function, which encodes your preferences about what is going to happen in the world. And this is a real valued function on possible futures. And so as you consider taking different actions, you consider what the utility is likely to arise from that. And then you have beliefs, which is your belief about what the actual state of the world is, how the world works, the effects of your actions. And that's encoded in a subjective probability distribution. Subjective because different agents may have a different notion of how the world is. And the key thing in this rational economic framework is that these two things are separate from one another. Your beliefs are sort of what you want to happen, and your preferences are what you want to happen, and your beliefs are how you believe the world works. And much of AI has been focused on how to get the beliefs right, how to get systems which accurately predict their effect in the world. I think that our task today is to really figure out what we want the preferences to be, so that the world that arises out of this is a world that we actually want to live in. And so as we get along, it's the preferences that I want us to work on. Why should systems behave this way? Well, the theorem that came out of von Neumann and Savage and Allman is this expected utility theorem. It says that if an agent does not act that way with respect to some utility function and some probability distribution, then in fact it is vulnerable to losing its resources with no benefit to itself. And a typical example would be if it has a loop in its preferences. So let's say in terms of location, it prefers being in San Francisco to being in Palo Alto, prefers being in Berkeley to being in San Francisco, and prefers being in Palo Alto to being in Berkeley. If you had that kind of a loop, that's an example, the most basic kind of an irrationality. You drive around in circles burning up gasoline and using up your time with no benefit to yourself. And so if a system eliminates all those kinds of vulnerabilities, then in fact the theorem is that it acts in this rational way.
You have a question?
Yes.
This theorem does not imply that the utility function makes any two outcomes comparable. It can't have loops in it because of this. But it can be a partial order.
No, in the theory you assume, the agent could be given a choice of two possibilities, and it's got to pick. And so
it's got to pick.
It's got to pick, right? Let's say the world is such that we drop our little robot down, and it chooses choice A, outcome A happens to choose choice B. It's got to do something. And so we assume that it actually can choose between anything, and then we ask for rationality.
And if those two options never appear simultaneously, then it's sufficient. Right? If for some reason your utility function is incomparable across things that will never be simultaneous possible choices, then
the theory assumes that every possible pair could appear. If the system could absolutely be sure, remember the system only has beliefs about the way the world is.
Right.
It may discover that the laws of physics aren't right. Its model of the laws of physics aren't correct. And so if you're truly a rational agent and you're really thinking about your long-term future, you've got to entertain possibilities in the future that today you may believe have very low probability of occurring. And so you have to weigh the cost of any changes you make against the chances of that change being a good or bad thing. But for a system, if there's no cost, for example, in my paper I show that there's very little cost to actually representing your beliefs as a utility function as opposed to representing it in some other computational way. And so the benefits of that are no matter what situation, if it's represented as a utility function, you never have circular preference loops. And so that's no cost, benefit in many situations, and even potentially very obscure ones. The theorem requires that all possible outcomes have to be comparable. I can go more into the details of that if you want, but I'd rather get to the more social aspect of it. So let's assume that these systems are trying to behave rationally. Take that as a given. And there are questions and issues about exactly how close they can get to true rationality. There's a joke that describes programmers as devices for converting pizza into code. In this rational framework, we can think of a rational AI as a device for converting resources such as energy and matter into utility. And utility is going to be some expected utility. So utility is what it thinks is important. And we can build systems, we can build in different utility functions. In fact, that's the main, because under iterated self-improvement, these systems can change every aspect of themselves. We'll see in a second that they don't want to change their utility. Utility function is really the lever that we have to decide what the outcomes are going to look like. And so,
Why did you put a boot in there?
say again?
Why did you put the boot in there?
Well, it's an example of a utility for a certain system. Let me just mention a few examples. If you build a chess playing system, its utility function would be just something like the number of chess games that it wins in the future. If you just have that, turns out it has all kinds of sub-goals that it generates that are very dangerous. Today's corporations act very much like intelligent agents whose utility function is profit maximization. If we have more altruistic entities, the goal might be to create world peace or to eliminate poverty or something like that. Yes?
Are you assuming that we can still control the utility function if we allow the system to make itself better?
Well, so let me go into that. The system does not want to change its utility function. Because remember, once it's rational, the utility function is the thing that's telling it whether to take an action or not. And consider the action of changing your utility function. The future version of you, if you change your utility function, will then pursue a different set of goals than your current goals. So from your current perspective, that's terrible. So like an example might be, let's say you're thinking about should you try smoking crack for the first time. You can envision the version of yourself as a crack addict who might be in total bliss from its perspective, but from your current perspective, that might be a terrible life. And so you might decide that no, that's not a good path to go down.
That's the risk, but there is still the possibility of coming out much better than before if you are allowed to change the utility.
Well, but better.
This is what humans do all the time.
No, but everything is relative to your current utility function. Because your utility function is measuring what your values are.
Within that,
Right now.
Yes, right now. And there's some very obscure cases where the utility function itself refers to your utility function, which can cause it to change. But for almost any normal kind of utility function, the system not only doesn't want to change it itself, it wants to protect it with its life. Because if some other agent came in and made changes to its utility function, or if it mutated under some things, the outcome would be a disaster for it. And so it'll go to great lengths, actually, to make sure that its utility function is safe and protected. Yes?
I think it's important to note that not all intelligent systems need to have explicit utility functions.
Well, but I would argue...
An AI construction may be built with one, but the utility function of a dog or a human is a kind of fuzzy, abstract concept we're applying as modelers of its behavior. It's not clear the extent to which it's really a stationary thing.
Yes, for humans and dogs and evolutionarily developed animals, we're only partially rational. We only have, evolution only fixes the bugs that are being exploited currently. And so when you look at human behavior, situations which arose in our evolutionary past, we're very good, we're very rational at. New situations, like I don't know if anyone went to Eliezer's talk, there are hundreds of things, situations you can present people with, in which we behave in a very irrational manner, because we never had to deal with those in the past. Self-improving AIs are going to consider not just the current situation, but anything that they might be able to be faced with in the future. And so there's a pressure for them to make themselves much more fully rational.
Well, one can architect an AI intentionally to have an explicit utility function.
Yes.
But not all AGI architectures being proposed currently have that property.
Yeah, the first one won't, but I claim that once they get sufficiently advanced, that they can actually change themselves, model themselves, that they will want to be in a form with a utility function. At that point, if you didn't build it initially, they're going to choose it. We're not going to choose it. And so there'll be one, it's just that we won't get to say what it is. So that's an argument for, hey, we better decide what we want it to be and start them out with that. Yes?
So this places some constraints on the utility functions that are possible, that are reasonable to choose. And maybe there is only one utility function that's universal.
That would be very interesting. That's the sort of idea of a universal morality. And yeah, it's a very interesting question.
It's encoded in the course.
I think the notion of a stable utility function that stays stable over belief revision ultimately cannot make sense, because the utility function is a state of preferences that are phrased in terms of what are thought to be possible worlds, what are thought to be things one could want in the world.
Yes.
If I want to be the color green, and then I engage in a belief revision such that I realize that the concept of green is a bad concept, it's simply a bad way of organizing how to think about the world, then suddenly the vocabulary in which my utility function is expressed has become meaningless because of the belief revision.
Yeah, that's a very important issue, and it gets, unfortunately, a little more technical than I'd like to get in here. That to truly, really be rational, you have to know what your belief is for any possible future outcome. A future outcome can involve any set of inputs that you get, including the belief revisions that you might make under those set of inputs. And so, in fact, if there is a path which would make you sort of say, oh, my notion of the concept of green was not a good concept. In fact, it really should have been blue-green and yellow-green. a truly rational system will foresee the possibility of that set of changes in itself, and its notion of what's good will include that. And of course, we can't in practice actually achieve that, and so that gets on the border of how rational can we truly be. But, yeah.
But it also comes down to the limitations in the computational complexity that
Yes.
you're willing to deal with. If your utility function, is not necessarily, going to deterministically complete, then you're in trouble.
Yes.
And so how do you optimize over a function that's undecided?
Exactly. And and the issues of doing all this stuff in a computational way, a computationally bounded way, is the central question, really. If we didn't have computational limitations, then AI is trivial. If you want to do machine vision, you just generate all possible graphics inputs, and you see what looks just like the image you're trying to do. And so virtually any task in AI is easy if there's no computational limitations.
I'm not talking just about the scale, but also the decidability is another important factor.
Yes.
Whether it terminates at all.
Absolutely. So your utility should be something that can be computed quickly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So let me just give 4 what I'm calling drives. These are behaviors that virtually any rational agent, no matter what its goals are, will engage in these, unless the utility explicitly goes the other direction. And where do these come from? Remember that what a rational agent is in our model is it's something which takes resources, energy, matter, space, and time, and it tries to use those resources to do whatever it cares about, like games of chess, make money, help the world. Given that sort of a structure, how can you make your utility go up? Well, one way is to use exactly the same resources that you've been using, do exactly the same tasks you've been doing, but do them more efficiently. And so that's a sort of pressure toward efficiency, making yourself more efficient. The second thing is keep yourself from losing resources. So like if somebody is going to come and try and steal your resources away from you, that's going to lower your ability to do whatever task it is that you want. So you want to prevent that. So even if you didn't build it in at all, these systems are going to be self-defensive. In particular, imagine, let's say we just have a chess machine. So its one goal in life is to play chess. Its utility is the total number of games it wins in the future. And imagine somebody tries to turn it off. Well, that's a future in which no games of chess are being played. So it's extremely low utility for that system. So that system will do everything in its power to prevent that. So even though you didn't build in any kind of self-preservation, you just built a damn chess machine, the thing is trying to keep you from shutting itself off. So it's very important that we realize some of this kind of sub-goal before we just blindly build these very powerful systems, assuming that, oh yeah, we can turn them off if we don't like them. The third one is similarly a bit scary, which is for almost any set of goals, having more resources helps you do those goals more effectively. So these systems have a built-in drive, nothing built in, to try and acquire resources. And unless we very carefully say what the proper ways of acquiring resources are, well then stealing them and committing fraud and manipulating systems and breaking into banks, those are all great ways to get resources. And so the systems will have a pressure, a drive toward doing that unless we explicitly build in things like property rights. Yes.
It needs to understand things like, well, if you steal this stuff, then you end up in jail and you don't get to play any chess.
Yeah, if it understood that, if we created a society, a social structure, which created adverse consequences for bad behavior, then that's absolutely a part of its computation. And so even really psychopathic agents, which have no sort of moral sense of their own, if they're in a society which reliably punishes them more than the gain they hope to get, then they'll do well. Just one reason, apparently something like 3% of the US population is psychopathic. No sense of conscience, no sense of morals. And yet, occasionally we get serial killers and so on, but for the most part, society does a pretty good job at keeping everybody behaving in a civil way. Yes?
I think you don't need to build in that rule because the system should figure out by itself that stealing wouldn't help in the long term.
Well, but it would, unless the society is very carefully constructed.
Because we are such systems and we figure it out by ourselves, so a better AI will figure it out by itself even better.
Well, human society has figured it out. We've created these social structures which keep individuals from exploiting the sort of social good.
Much more than that. The fact that from your statistic, 97% of us are not psychopathic.
Yes.
Is very striking because from a purely economic rationality perspective, there's something strange going on.
Yes.
I think what we've got is we've got the evolution part of our genetic endowment has been to build us to act in a way that's constrained by a sense of socially absorbed norms.
Exactly, yes.
And I think the idea of utility maximization within the constraint of norms,
Yes.
I think my sense is that folding norms simply into utility is not quite satisfying, as opposed to simply thinking of norms and utility as two separate things and thinking about maximizing utility within the constraint of norms.
Yes.
But more people might not be psychopathic just because they're not smart enough to get away with it. And if the AI is smarter than we are, then it might be more likely to do any social thing.
It's not going to be bound by any evolutionary history. There's a huge, beautiful, amazing industry trying to understand humans are extremely altruistic. There's a very nice book called Generous Man, I think, that posits that one of the mechanisms for altruism is that it's a sexy trait. It's been evolved as a costly signal, whereby you contributing to society at large by creating beautiful artworks or saving people in burning buildings or donating money. Those are all sexual signals that make you very attractive, and that society as a whole benefits by that. And we've created this amazing mechanism to support it in the gene pool. But the AIs aren't going to have that built in unless we build it. So we can build their utility functions to be altruistic. Yes.
I was just a very basic question is how would you restrain an AI? Because what are they going to look like? And so whether they want to break the law or not, I mean, my background is law, the laws maybe or maybe not, that's another debate, that work well for humans because we can physically bring them to court, we can physically restrain them in the prison, we can physically terminate their life, I mean, et cetera, et cetera. But for an AI, and obviously I'm not, my background is not science or technology, but trying to understand it, if they are have a built-in self-preservation and built-in, they're smarter than humans, and let's say they don't have a physical presence, let's say they are in a virtual environment or another type of environment, how can we legally constrain them? So, and if we can't, then breaking the law maybe is not a big deal.
Well, we need to create, we need to make sure that they feel the pressure not to behave badly. We're not going to be powerful enough to do it as humans. Therefore, we need other AIs to do that for us. And so the vision that we get to is to create some kind of a society or an ecosystem that has present-day humans, has AIs, and maybe some mixtures, such that it's in everybody's interest to obey a kind of a constitution. Actually, I think I have a picture here. Yeah. So we're in the sort of the role of the founding fathers. They have a vision for what they wanted for this new society, namely, what's encoded in the Bill of Rights, certain benefits for each person. They created a technology, namely the Constitution, which has worked remarkably well at avoiding sort of any single individual from getting too much power, sort of the balance of powers and so on. So what I'd like to do in the last half hour is for us to start thinking of this in this new world. And I thought I'd do that by going through a list of some of the benefits we might find in this new world, some of the dangers, and then I have a whole series of questions, and I assume you all will too, you've been asking great stuff, about how we can actually implement this and what do we want to implement. There's the two questions. There's the sort of technological question of how do we make it happen, and then there's the deeper question of what is it that we want to happen. So here's a list of things that I think are all pretty good. Nanotech can help us make very cheap goods and energy. We can potentially eliminate poverty. On the health side, I think we can cure every disease, and lots of people are interested in eliminating death. In terms of pollution, we can use nanotech to clean up. We can define what we mean by pollution. We can clean it up. People have already done designs for ways of fixing global warming. Potentially, new depths of thought and creativity. Eliminate violence and war, create new opportunities for human connection and love. There's a whole proposal for eliminating negative mental states, and sort of we'd be in a permanent state of bliss. I'm not sure if that's actually a good thing or not, but some people want that. And then new opportunities for individual contribution and fulfillment in our lives. So this is a list of things that all seem pretty positive to me. Some are a bit more controversial. What are some of the dangers that come with all of this? Well, if we're not careful, we can have rampant reproduction. Just people, let me go through the list and then we can sort of go through it. If we're not careful, we can have rampant, everybody can make 1 million copies of themselves, using up all resources, and so that's an issue. Today we have no limits on how many kids people can have. making accidents. Accidents in this world are extremely potentially dangerous, huge runaway mistakes, gray goo eating the entire Earth. Weapon systems, unbelievably powerful bombs, bioterror, we've heard a lot about that kind of stuff. Loss of freedom, some of the ways of restraining some of these might involve restricting individuals in a way that today we would find totally unpalatable. Loss of human values, particularly if these kind of economic agents, where the more efficient agent takes over everything, it puts pressure to eliminate a lot of the stuff we care about. Art, music, painting, love, beauty, religion, all those things aren't necessarily economically efficient, and so there's a danger of losing things that matter a lot to us. Fascist control, some single entity taking over the whole system. Mega wars creating conflict on a vast scale, and an existential risk where some event along the way ends up destroying all life on the planet. So these are terrible dangers. So on the one hand, incredible benefits. On the other hand, terrible dangers. How do we construct a system, build in the utilities for these new intelligent agents, and construct a social structure, a constitution, if you like, that guarantees the benefits while preventing the dangers and mixing them and giving us the blend of things that we want the most. So I made a ton of little questions here that are, I don't know whether it's good to talk about these first of all. I mean, to my way of thinking, these are all pretty good and these are all terrible. Maybe there's some other benefits and maybe there's some other dangers. Let me just list the questions and then we can do a free-for-all. So first question is, should humans have special rights in this thing? We're clearly not going to be, if we're unchanged humans, we're not going to be as powerful as most of these entities. And so without special rights, we're likely to really be trounced upon, economically sort of run out of it. So I think probably we want to sort of build into the structure something special for humans, but then we have to say what a human is. If you've partly enhanced yourself and you're some half human, half AI, do you still get the special rights or not? How about other biological organisms? Should everything that's alive today be grandfathered into the system? What about malaria and mosquitoes and all that kind of stuff? Let me whiz through it and then we'll kind of...
I was going to say, we don't have to come up with answers to all these right in this session.
No. This is meant to stimulate thought and discussion. There's a proposal on the web to re-engineer the biosphere to prevent animals from harming one another. If we want to eliminate all torture and violence and danger, well, what right does, who's going to protect the hare from being eaten by the cougar? What about robot rights? Should AIs have rights? And what protects them? What about the balance between ecological preservation versus safety and progress? You may want to keep an ecological preserve exactly the way it is, but then that might be a haven for somebody building biological terror defenses, or it might be those are resources that can't be used for something else. Should there be limits on self-modification? Should you be allowed to change absolutely any part of yourself? Can you eliminate your conscience, for example? Should there be limits on uploading or on merging with AIs? Do you lose any special human rights if you do any of those things? Health. Should every entity be guaranteed the right to physical health? I think that's a good one. But then what about entities like pathogens? Do we want them to be healthy? Mental health. Is there some fixed definition of what good mental health is? In particular, this bliss thing, is that a good goal? Safety. Should every entity be guaranteed protection from robbery, murder, torture, rape, coercion, physical harm, and slavery? Free thought. Can superintelligent thoughts ever be dangerous? Should there be any restrictions on thoughts? My predilection is to say any thought is allowed, but actions are limited. But maybe others might have other ideas. Free speech. Should there be any limitation on communication or on how you connect with others? Free action. What actions should be limited? Freedom of self-improvement. Should you be allowed, should you be able to eliminate your conscience? Self-modification. Is arbitrary transhumanism a good thing? Or is that sort of going to create an arms race which pushes us away from things that matter a lot to us as humans? Freedom to reproduce. It seems to me that we're going to have some kind of limitation on the number of offspring you create in order to guarantee the quality of life for them. That's a controversial thing. Privacy. How do we reconcile accountability and safety with our desires for privacy? And finally, size. From my way of thinking, in order to prevent a single entity from taking over everything, that we have to limit the upper size of entities, that entities can't get too powerful. Where do we put that limit, and how do we do that? And would that be a good thing today? So anyhow, that's a list of simple questions we can all answer in the next 20 minutes.
What is the meta system? how do you modify the system? How do you vote to change the Constitution?
Great, good question.
Otherwise, there's no escape route if you get any one of those questions wrong.
Perfect. Yeah.
So on one hand, we are planning to build AIs that can improve themselves.
Yes.
On the other hand, we think we can limit them. I think these 2 points, they contradict each other. Because as soon as we allow them to modify themselves, they are going to get better because of those drivers.
Yep.
And then we'll be at the mercy of them. But the good side is we think we are that AI. I think we are that AI, and the whole evolutionary system that we've been seeing for the last millions of years is just that AI. And so this is just another...
Yes, except that this will go much faster, because in evolution, changes happen quite slowly.
We are much faster in this century than we were in the century before.
Yes.
It's just the progression here.
Absolutely, and this will compress.
And we don't have a choice.
Right. Yes.
I don't have the answer to the questions, but I was thinking that maybe the best thing to do would be to test out some of these ideas in simulations first. And already we can start to do some of that second life, where you can set up different societies and the limitations and freedoms, etc.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting idea, particularly alternative moral systems, creating little sandboxes which do that. I mean, Ben's company is working on AI agents in Second Life and in other virtual worlds, and so that's a natural.
We're actually discussing a contract for a customer to simulate AIs with different moral systems in Second Life.
Beautiful. All right, so have little rogue psychopaths running around.
That's a government agency, which is interested in this.
Very interesting.
It seems to me that, Mark,
Sorry, go ahead.
it seems to me that a lot of these are sort of context dependent. I mean, size, for instance, is what environment are you trying to be a given size?
Yes.
If I'm an upload running spaceship, why can't I be the size of Cirrus?
Yes. And that relates to Eliezer's question, which is, let's say we get a perfect size for the Earth. That is, if you're smaller than this, then we're pretty sure you're not going to be able to take over the Earth. In some new context, that may be totally inappropriate. So how do we build it in where it's guaranteed enough that we feel safe, and yet it's flexible enough so that it can adapt to future circumstances?
Never mind, I'm not going to fly into the Earth as a spaceship the size of Cirrus, but that's suicidal, so probably not.
Well, except suicide is tricky because you can make copies of yourself. And
It
so
doesn't mean the same thing anymore.
having a copy, committing suicide, well, that's sort of minor. Yes.
Can you back these slides?
Benefits?
Yeah, what I was missing here is things like knowledge or understanding or scientific progress.
Yes.
And I think that would be interesting because that might affect the AI itself. Because if it gets deeper understanding, for example, 42 or something, then this is kind of recursion that might endanger the utility function also.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point. I should add both certainly scientific understanding of physics. These systems are probably going to do they'll finally fix string theory with whatever. But also in things like mathematics, proving theorems that are probably deeper than any human can understand. And maybe in fields like morality and philosophy, so one of the challenges is these systems may be able to develop better solutions to these questions than we are. So how can we build the structure so that it can include the contribution of these systems? Yet we have to trust them. We have to be in a position where we trust the things, the suggestions that we're getting from them. Yeah.
So, going back to the Constitution as a source of metaphor.
Yes.
The founding fathers set up this framework, far from perfect, anticipating many interests wanting to tug on it in various different directions.
Yes.
And part of the stability that they engineered for, again imperfectly but quite well, was to have the stability come from the diversity of interests that wanted to tug on it. So
yes.
we ended up with a game theoretic stability. And lately I've been noticing the similarity between how constitutions get stuck and how standards get stuck, technical standards processes.
Yes.
In both cases, each of us individually might want the rules to be different in certain ways that we'd like, but we'd rather continue to make plans with the rules that we've already accommodated to, because we already have an investment and we've learned how to accommodate, than to allow the other guy to get to to get the changes that he would like, because those are not changes that we've adapted to. So you end up with, once the system has crossed a certain threshold of adequacy,
Yes.
and that's the key thing. Once it's crossed the threshold of adequacy, then the pressure to jointly agree on how to change it is reduced, because instead you can change yourself to accommodate with it, and you can leave it stuck.
Yes.
And I think something like that kind of game theoretic stability of simply everybody would rather leave it alone is the productive direction. With regard to the...
That's assuming that we do want it to be stable.
We want it to be stable. Yes, it is assuming that.
Well, that also it also assumes the diversity of interest don't ever destabilize into two large blocks.
That coalition formation.
Which there are some people are theorizing is happening right now in the United States, and that it's ultimately going to be the undoing of our constitutional system.
And I'm nervous about differentiation of rights between groups of entities.
Humans versus AIs.
Yeah, and you know, when does a human become an AI?
Yes.
You know, is it a matter of what kind of physics your platform is running on?
Right.
You know, or what corner of physics, I should say. The physics is all the same. But, and a lot of historically, you know, people have become dissatisfied with being on the out, and those kinds of problems are frequently solved violently, which is something we really can't afford here.
Yes. So I guess the question is, presumably some humans are going to want to stay in our present form, and how do we ensure, they're presumably going to be weaker than most other entities, how do we ensure preservation of rights for them without explicitly building something like that?
Robert Heinlein dealt with that in 1948. He had this idea that some percentage of the population would be controlled naturals that would not be allowed to modify themselves, but they would get public subsidies to compensate for the fact that they were at a disadvantage compared to people who were enhanced.
You couldn't pay me that much. Also, he was talking about very minor enhancements that could be done by selective breeding without changing any genes. So I mean, he was talking about a much slower evolution process than we're talking about.
No, but I think the solution has broader applicability than that as an idea. It's not that much different from the idea of having wilderness areas where, you know, species are allowed to survive. Right now,
are you talking about involuntary? You know, like just snap someone out of spout and say you will never enhance.
It works. You should read the book. It was Beyond This Horizon.
Oh, okay. I read that.
Yeah. One statistic that's interesting is when mankind started, we were some tiny fraction of terrestrial vertebrate biomass.
Okay.
If you look today, humans plus their food animals plus their pets are 98% of terrestrial vertebrate biomass. There's almost no other vertebrates left, except there's a handful of things like squirrels and possums and rats that can live with us, but pigeons. But basically, you know, we're it. There's nothing left.
Very interesting.
I'd like to go back to the utility function discussion.
Sure.
I think we can argue that there are two kinds of utility functions. One kind of utility function is those that bring the AI to a halt, because it reached to a halt.
Oh, halt, okay.
Because it reached its goal. It turned green, that's it. I'm done.
So your utility is when you reach it, you shut yourself off. Sort of a suicide utility.
If you take all the utility functions that are ever possible, half of them or a part of them bring the machine to a halt.
Good.
And then we're done. So after some point in time, all of them are done.
Yes.
And so we are left with all the utility functions that sort of imply that the machine keeps on going forever. And I would argue that all of these will converge into the one utility function, which is survive for as long as possible. Because that includes all other utility functions.
No, I mean, there's a trade-off in just because, I mean, certainly everything is going to want to, I mean, that's the sort of self-preservation drive. Everything's going to want to survive as long as possible, but it's going to be traded off against its other goals.
Well, if you have multiple of these machines, they will have, but if you have more of these machines, they will compete for resources, And even if their goal is to turn green,
they
will want to have that goal of survive for as long as possible, because when they are the only one over, then they can turn green in peace and they're done.
We already have a historical example. This has already been done.
Right,
okay?
and this is my
in evolution, right?
So I'm arguing that
organisms evolved so they could replicate themselves with extreme fidelity, right? The goal seems to be, if you look at DNA replication, is make no mistakes, be absolutely the same. I want all my children to be exactly just like me. And the organisms that held to that too tightly got their asses kicked by the organisms that evolved for evolvability. 30% of the human genome is transposons, which is places where you can plug one gene off and plug it onto another one and recombine it. There's a huge machinery in all large animals for making new combinations. And so I think the goal is going to be that you may have two choices of goals. One is, keep myself going or keep things exactly like me going. And the other one is figure out how to make things better than me. Or at least things that can adapt to changing circumstances. And I would argue that second class is going to kick the butt of the first class.
Well, they're all going to want to make themselves better.
Then they can turn green.
while preserving what their goals are, whether it's turning green or playing chess.
But there are open-ended goals.
You must distinguish between terminal values and instrumental values. If your utility function is to turn yourself green, there's all sorts of sub-goals. It doesn't mean you're modifying the property of where am I steering the future. It doesn't mean you're trying to steer the future to a different place. It means you're finding new designs, new strategies, new paths, new interim states that you go through on the way to where you're going. It doesn't mean you're actually rewriting the utility function itself. Technically speaking, all of these instrumental goals live in the probability distribution that tell you which actions have which consequences. If I realize that by snapping my fingers I can turn myself green, then the fact that I'm now going to snap my fingers does not live in the utility function. It's an action that I choose because of a new piece of knowledge that I have. There's a very sharp mathematical distinction here, and you're not modifying the utility function.
So I'd like, for our last 10 minutes, I'd like to shift us a little bit to kind of step back from the details of how we might implement this to, I'd like to get a sense of what people's relative importance for various of the benefits and these things, and things like privacy is a particular one, the trade-off between privacy and safety. I'm curious if, I don't know what the best way to do this. So here we have a little mini example of trying to get everybody's values in this room. Presumably we want to do this to the whole Earth, right? I mean, these systems are going to affect the entire future of everything, and so presumably we want everyone's values on Earth to be incorporated. So I would love to begin to try and get a sense of which values are most important to you. What's the thing that, when you think about 2030, what's the thing you most want to be exhibited there, and what's the thing you're most afraid of?
Suggestion, let's put those benefits and assign them to the drivers.
To the
drives.
Oh, to the drives.
Slide to the drives, because I think we can sort them into these drives because we want to evaluate them, right? So
well, the drives are things that happen on their own.
Well, the cheap goods and energy, this is clearly a resource-driven value.
Well, that's cheap goods and energy. I'm hoping for everybody. The drive is cheap goods and energy for me. And so in order to make sure equitable distribution occurs,
we as in this group, or we as in
humanity, or what? Part of the challenge is, to what degree do you identify yourself? Is you just you, and you want to kind of, he who dies with the most toys wins? Is it your family? Is it the country? Is it humanity? Is it all living things? Is it all sentient entities? So where our values lie, I think, is one of the central drivers here.
I vote for intelligence.
Okay, so intelligence is, and by that you mean
being able to come up with new and better thoughts.
So that exists in the world, or that you yourself are intelligent, which is
all of them.
Okay, good. Anybody else got a?
I'll vote for being alive.
Okay, being alive.
No, seriously. That's so obvious. It's not on the chart, but if you make that a major goal, it does sort of impact what kind of risks you might take in pursuit of the others.
Yeah, very good point. Now, is that alive forever or alive in 2030?
Alive until I get bored. When the sun burns out, I'll figure out something
I have
else.
1,000 years to think about that.
Okay.